Hello, welcome to another ODNT Spotlight. I'm Steve DeWinter, and I am here. We have a new author guest with us tonight, Ryan Toxopeus, and he is here bringing us his Empire's Foundation trilogy, starting with Book 1, A Noble's Quest, which is already out. Book 2, A Wizard's Gambit. Ooh, I love that cover. And Book 2 is also already out. And then Book 3, he has just finished up the first draft, or very close to finishing up the first draft, but he has a cover sketched out already, and we'll talk a little bit more about this cover because there's something really neat going on here that I definitely want to ask him about. But let's go ahead and let's switch on over to meet Ryan. Hello, Ryan. Welcome to ODNT Spotlight.
Hello, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Hey, excellent. So let's go ahead and let's talk about why you wanted to start writing. At what age were you when you decided, you know what, I got some cool stories in me?
I guess I started when I was around 18 or 19. I wrote my first book, which has been trunked. It will never see the light of day. It was bad. But, you know, for a first work, I learned a lot. And then I kind of stopped writing for a while. I got busy with other things. University got in the way, and then I moved, and I just never thought about writing again. But my friend Ian came to visit me and my wife after we had our Dungeons and Dragons games.
Oh, right, Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, and I said, yeah, I remember those. And he said, have you ever thought about writing them up as books? And I hadn't, but, you know, we got to talking about it, and I thought, you know, that's something that I could do. Yeah, it would be something fun to do in what little spare time I had. So, yeah, that's where I got the inspiration from, was actually my friend.
Okay, so he said, hey, let's take some of the games we ran in Dungeons & Dragons and let's put them out in the fictional narrative.
Yeah, that campaign that he was talking about is actually the next series that I'm going to write. But there was another game that I'd played with a couple other friends that came chronologically before the one I'd played with him. So that's where A Noble's Quest, A Wizard's Gambit, and A Hero's Birth comes from, as a previous gaming session.
Ah.
Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. So tell us a little bit about your Empire's Foundation trilogy.
Sure. It starts off with a couple of lumberjacks living in a poverty-stricken town, and
do they sit around singing, I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay?
Nope. They just regular day go to work, and they wind up having a fight with the foreman's sons. There's a fatality, and they have to run away. Fortunately for them, there's a nobleman in their town who is looking for expendable hired help to do some dirty work for him.
More planned fatalities.
Yes. So he gives them a fairly simple job just to see if they're worth hiring on at all. And so they muddle their way through it. They manage to survive, barely. And he takes them in, and he teams them up with his niece Eliza, who's on the cover of A Noble's Quest. And they go around the Empire and beyond, trying to put the pieces together, get the wheels in motion to uncover a mystery. And they don't know what it's about. The nobleman hasn't given any of them any clues. So they're trying to piece this together while they're traveling around, and they're not prepared for it at all when it's revealed. And I've actually had a lot of readers say that they didn't see it coming either, but when it hits, they put all the pieces together from previously in the story, and they're like, oh yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. And so I had a lot of really good feedback soon after I released the first book. So I thought, well, I'd written it as a standalone because I wasn't sure how it would be received. But after I got the good feedback, I said, well, I'm going to keep on going with this. And so the second book starts off the day after the first book finishes. They're hungover from celebrations. They think that they're going to be entering this golden age. They're given new responsibilities. They're no longer just lowly lumberjacks. And so they're starting on their path to heroism at that point. I had one reader said, you know, I thought they would be more heroic by the end of it, but they're not really heroes yet. And I said, no, it takes the full series for them to become heroes. So yeah, in the second book, they think that everything's going great, and then almost immediately things go wrong. They've got outside forces trying to topple the Empire. An undead plague breaks out inside of the Empire, and that's just the first half of the book where they're dealing with all of this crazy stuff going.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's a wild ride. It's very fast paced. I don't really like slow paced type fantasy, like a Tolkien type thing where he belabors every point, and you know it's so slow. So I really enjoy the fast pace, and my mantra is, you know, if I'm bored writing it, people will be bored reading it. I really like to keep things fresh and keep things moving.
That's an excellent mantra to have.
Yeah.
That's great. And so you mentioned that the story Noble's Quest started out with fatality.
Yes.
And you seem to have a lot of fatalities backing up across your series.
Yes. The first book is actually pretty tame. There are a few what I would call major minor characters who die along the way, but it's mostly, you know, pretty happy, go well. The second book, as is classical in the trilogy, ends dark. There are some characters that I expect the readers will love who don't make it at that point. And yeah, and then the third book, it's a bloodbath. I'm surprised sometimes when some of the characters die, because although I have an outline that I try to follow, the characters sometimes have other ideas and they go off and do their own thing, and death happens as a result of some of those things.
So you mentioned your third book, which you're just finishing up the first draft now.
Yes.
Is a bloodbath, and I mentioned earlier when we were looking at the cover that there was going to be, let me find the cover here. There it is. So I've zoomed in to this one section of the cover because I spotted this when I was looking at the covers when you sent me the covers, that this looks like I see a creature with arms and legs, but it's made out of bodies.
Yes. That is the Abomination. It is put together by the character that you see in the background there with the purple light coming out of his hand. I'm not going to reveal his name because it is still a secret who the antagonist of the book is.
We will call him Bob.
Sure. So Bob has the ability to resurrect the dead. And so he's got an army of skeletons and zombies and in all different states of decay that follow him around and do his bidding. And one of the bright ideas that he has is to make a mega zombie out of all of them. So they all actually grapple onto each other and hold each other together. And then they've got these great big sweeping arms and legs where there's arms and teeth and legs sticking out of it that can grab opponents, and it's just the stuff of nightmares.
That is terrifying. I would turn and run. I'm like, okay, my story's over. Bye. That is terrifying. What a great idea. How did you come up with that idea?
I don't even remember.
You woke up in sweats.
Yeah, I
screaming.
I was just trying to think of like the scariest type of thing that I could do for book 3, considering the antagonist that I had who has these powers over the undead. And I thought, you know, a swarm of zombies has been done before. It's been done too much, really. So I thought, you know, how can I make this fresh? How can I do something? And just the thought popped into my head of the zombies like clinging to each other and making a larger mass with more strength. And you know, it's still this unkillable machine, because you know, if you chop off a few of the zombies, it doesn't really care. The other zombies will adjust to make up for it. And so the main structure remains intact throughout the whole thing. And it's been a lot of fun to write, and I'm looking forward to getting to the final battle where it really comes into play.
Wow, that is impressive. Now I'm bummed because now you've got the idea. It's already gone. I'm like, oh, wish I'd thought of that. That is, and I see the movie now. He's in the trailer.
Yeah, yes,
for the
definitely.
movie.
Well, it's funny because Harvey Bunda, who does my cover art, put together some promotional videos for me, and the first time when I put out the promotional video for Noble's Quest, I had comments like, "Wow, I feel like it's already a movie." It's so. But if that opportunity ever came up one day, I'd be up for that. That'd be fun.
Yeah, and I will put the links to. I've got the links to your website here, and on it there's a section called Media, and I highly suggest you go to Ryan's website and you click the media link there and you check out these YouTube videos for his trailers. I love the Wizard Gambit one. It has this 3D effect. He takes this flat picture and makes this 3D effect that you went and then created a GIF based on that is just phenomenal.
Oh, and I was blown away when I saw it. And he told me it took all of his computer's processing power to be able to do that. Like, it was...
There it is.
Not being able to handle what he was doing.
That is... We'll let it cycle through one more time.
Sure.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
I couldn't be happier working with Harvey. He has been absolutely amazing. And, I spent a lot of time after I released the first book. I put it out with just cover art that I made that wasn't very good, but I wasn't willing to sink a whole lot more money into it at that point. I'd already paid for editing, and I was like, well, I can make, kind of a simple cover. But then once I started getting the good reviews, I said, well, I need a cover to match the quality of the book.
Right.
So I started looking around, and I was having a heck of a time finding an artist. I kept seeing a lot of style that I wasn't really crazy about. I really liked the old fantasy style. Think like the Crystal Shard type thing from Ari Salvatore, where he's got the scene with the characters involved in it. And so I really like that idea instead of, just a big blow up of a character's face with a little bit of background or something.
Right.
That didn't really speak to me. And I was thinking long term, I want something that I can have in posters, something that looks like a piece of art. And that's exactly what Harvey made for me. And he just blows me away every time. The first time I worked with him with A Noble's Quest, I told him what I saw as my vision for the cover. And I had some very specific ideas. I wanted Eliza to be fully armored and not, the World of Warcraft armor where they're
scantily clad,
half exposed, like
metallic bikini.
Yeah, that's not how
that's not fighting ready.
No, not at all. So I told him the pose that I imagined her in and everything, and he actually took my vision and made it better than what I saw in my own mind. And I just couldn't believe it. And he did the exact same thing with the second cover. Like, he took what I told him, and as soon as I saw it, I got misty-eyed looking at it, because I was just like, it is so perfect. It is just amazing. So I'm proud to have those covers on my books for sure.
Yeah, those are excellent covers. So great job finding an excellent artist who can give you the vision that you want so that your book cover matches the quality of what's inside.
Yes.
And so now we're talking about you getting your own covers. It sounds like you have become your own publisher. You've got editors now that you pay. You've got an artist that you're working with so that you can put out a good quality product. And so tell me about the path that you decided, I'm not going to go and try to shop this around. Or maybe you did try to shop it around and got sick and tired of all the rejections from people who should have known better.
My story doesn't quite follow that path. I wrote A Noble's Quest. I did shop it out to some agents, but before I even heard back, I heard about this thing called self-publishing. And so I was curious about that. I did some reading, and there are a lot of horror stories from the traditional publishing world, and it's so hard to break in because traditional publishers aren't willing to take a chance on new authors. And even when an author does go to a traditional publisher, they don't have a lot of control over their work. The publisher can decide to edit things out. They choose the cover that goes on the book. I wouldn't be able to do what I wanted, basically. The book could look completely different. It could have different content, and I just wasn't willing to have that kind of sacrifice. So before I even heard back, I'd made up my mind pretty much that I wanted to go self-publishing. And then I got a couple of rejection letters from agents, as is typical.
Yeah.
But they were a sort of positive rejection. They were the type of rejection where they say, this isn't exactly what we're looking for right now. I brought it to the boss, and he says it doesn't quite fit, but we really liked it. And if you come up with something in the future, please send it our way. So, that kind of personalized response gave me a lot of hope that, I can find a market for this book. It's well written, it's been edited, it's got excellent cover art. You can put together a really good package self-published, as long as you have the resources available to do that. Because obviously with a traditional publisher, they're paying you and they have all those resources at hand, so they can do it with much more ease. But for my second and third books, I crowdfunded through Indiegogo. So people who were interested in it at that time, that I managed to raise the funds to get more cover art done and pay developmental editors. So it's worked out really nicely that way, and I've been able to keep on going without traditional publishers at this point. And I'm hoping by the end of the third book that the first trilogy will get the word out, people will be excited about it, and be able to fund my writing without having to go to Kickstarter or Indiegogo and beg people to help me out anymore.
Right. Pay me before I write it.
Yeah. I feel uncomfortable with that.
It's just so the reverse of what we're used to thinking.
Yeah.
But a lot of people use Indiegogo and Kickstarter and everything, and you had some success with it.
I did, yeah.
So that's excellent.
My first campaign, I didn't really know what I was doing, to be perfectly honest, and I set the bar too high, and I didn't reach my goal. I only got about half, and so Indiegogo took a larger percentage because I didn't reach my goal. So the second time going in, I set my goal lower to cover the developmental editing, and then I had the cover art as a stretch goal. So I got the editing covered, and I raised an extra $300 towards the cover art, and I got to keep a larger chunk of it because I hit my goal, even though it wasn't technically as much as I needed.
Some of the tricks.
Yeah, exactly. There's definite ways to game the system to your advantage. And I mean, for me, I was planning on bringing out the books anyway. So if I have to chip in a bit of my own money, I'm okay with that, as long as it's not, the whole amount. It would take me years to save up the $2,000 or $3,000 to bring out a book. Right,
but it enables you to get a good quality product out there, and that's visible immediately from the cover.
Yeah, and I know they say, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but everybody does.
Well, you know who says that? People with bad covers.
Yeah, exactly.
That's who says that. Excellent. So I noticed that when I was looking through on your website your book 3, which is A Hero's Birth, is slated to come out in 2017 because you're taking the time and effort to make sure that you get something good to wrap up your trilogy for.
Yes. I've learned along the way, and that was one comment that someone left on a review for A Wizard's Gambit, she said that I've obviously learned a lot from the first book, and the second book is an even better read. So the third book is going to be even tighter. I'm adding in a couple of extra steps along the way to make sure that everything goes smoothly, and to get it as cleaned up as possible before it even goes to editing. And the other reason it takes a little bit of extra time is because I have an extremely generous aunt who edited professionally her whole life, and she's now just doing editing for fun. And she read A Noble's Quest after I'd had it edited by someone else. And she said, well, I could tighten it up a little bit for you. And I said, well, I can't afford anything else. She said, no, all free. Don't worry about that. I just want to help. I think it would be fun. So we collaborated on that. And she said she had so much fun working on it with me that she'd be happy to work with me on future books too. So she's the only editor that I used for Wizard's Gambit. And well, that's not true. I did a developmental editor as well. R.J. Blaine looked at the story and made sure that the flow was correct and the character voices were correct, and there were no gaping plot holes. And then it went to copy editing after that. So I'm doing a similar idea. I'm using Shen Hart as my developmental editor this time, and my aunt is again going to do the copy editing. Shen should be able to get through the book in a couple of weeks. She's very fast, very efficient. But again, my aunt is doing it for free, so I'm not going to rush her to say, hurry up, come on.
Can't make the same demands.
Yeah, I don't have such a huge readership at this point that I need to worry about rushing. And I figure a precedent has been set by George Martin that, if it's out before 6 years, that's pretty good.
Right, then you're speeding along.
Yeah.
Yeah, he set the expectation.
Yeah.
So there we go. You can meet that. That's excellent.
The bar is very low.
So in it, you mentioned earlier that you worked from an outline, and, whether you stuck to it or not, it sounds like rather than being, there's the big debate out there is pantser versus plotter. And so it sounds like you fall more on the plotting side, where you've got an outline form that you then know what you're going to do with your story. So tell me a little bit about how far along you go for your outlining versus letting the story happen organically.
Right. My outline for Wizard's Gambit was chapter headings, and that was it. I just wanted to know the main things that I was going to hit, and then I just kind of wrote it. And sometimes I'm surprised by what happens. The characters seem to have a mind of their own and just do their own thing, which can be frustrating at times. At the start of the third book, I had a more extensive outline for the third book, where I had the basics of conversations that would happen, and I had fleshed it out a little more because I thought maybe that would make the writing process easier when I got to actually writing it out on the computer. But what I've found is my characters sometimes have other ideas in their heads, and for instance, Sorrentha was supposed to go with Thomas on this dream quest because Thomas, while drunk, had a vision, and Sorrentha, instead of going with him, said, "Are you crazy? That's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. I'm going somewhere else."
And there goes your outline. You're like, thanks a lot.
Yep, exactly. It's just like, no, Sorrentha, what are you doing to me? But it worked out really well. I thought, you know what? If this is what I think Sorrentha would do, I'll go with that for now. And if I get stuck and it turns out bad, I'll just go back. I'll cut out everything from this point and change it and force him to go the way I want it. But it actually turned out a lot better, I think, than I'd originally planned, because in this book it allows all three of my main characters to go off in their own direction and grow as individuals without the influence of the others around. And so they see different parts of the world. They experience new relationships, and it adds a level of frustration for the characters in some cases because they know things and the other characters don't necessarily believe them. So Thomas, Thomas and Sorrentha come from this small town, like I mentioned, and they're not religious in any way, shape, or form. They've grown up basically thinking the world is out to screw them. And Thomas finds religion along the way of this vision quest that he's gone on. And Sorrentha just thinks he's nuts. He doesn't believe anything that Thomas has to say about it. And it's a lot of fun writing that dialogue and
create
having
some conflict.
Because these two characters were best friends growing up. They've always relied on each other for everything, and so now there's this split happening between them, and it's really interesting to see how that's playing out and how they react to each other and how they feel like their friendship is kind of falling apart along the way.
Oh wow, that sounds really good. So you're dealing more with the internal struggles and everything, and tossing the outline and saying, all right, they're going to split up, and it created a better story, and we got to see more of your world.
Yes,
because they're all together.
They go in opposite directions. Eliza stays in the capital. She's got all kinds of political things that are going on, and she's trying to get a handle on the new situation that's arisen. Because the king is kind of going crazy and she's trying to handle all that. But meanwhile, Sorrentha goes off to the north, Thomas goes off to the south, and you get to see new regions of the world that haven't been explored before in greater detail. So it's been a lot of fun. They meet interesting characters along the way that they weren't necessarily expecting on meeting, and their lives just get totally tossed around, and by the end of it, they're completely different people in some cases.
Wow, that's excellent. And you came up with a lot of your story ideas from when you were playing games, Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And everything growing up. We were talking a little bit earlier before the show started. And you had a concept of turning the map in Wizard's Gambit. This is the map from your second book. And trying to come up with a concept for a game. You want to tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I was looking at it, and I've had this idea for a while now, because the Empire, as you see it in the map, or the land as you see it in the map there, hasn't always been as it is. If you look at the right-hand side, you've got Altanir, Tam, Newhome, Thaddeus, Dovland, Furton, and Capley. They all have ruins symbols on them because they used to exist as cities in different empires. But obviously that didn't last, but the characters discover some of those ruins along the way in the second and the third book. But I thought it would be fun to go back to when the humans first settle those lands in Newhome, and there are various races that inhabit that land when the humans get there. So there are the elves up in the northwest, dwarves are in the west, there's giants and gnomes living in the mountains around two towns, just to the kind of northeast-ish, and then southeast is halflings living down there. And so I thought it would be, and there's orcs living in the central forest area. They're nomads, so they're all over the place. But I thought it would be really fun to create sort of a Risk-style game where I'd break up those various areas into different states that can be conquered. And then I wanted to add more to it, so it was a more in-depth Risk game where you'd have heroes that can travel with the armies, they can have quests, they can get loot, they can do all kinds of different things that sway the way the game works. And the victory conditions for the game wouldn't necessarily be total domination like you'd have in Risk. It's more along the Axis and Allies line, where you can have a victory based on certain conditions. So if you raised a couple of the other people's capitals, that would be a victory condition. If you had a massive economy, if you built up like 10 cities or something like that, just throwing a number out there, then you would have an empire that was so huge as to be unstoppable. And then the idea is that at the end of the game, it basically leads into the book series with a Noble's Quest, with the events that lead up to the humans then winding up in the Timoran Empire area that you can see on the west coast there.
Very, very cool. And as you were rattling off all the city names, it brought to mind a question I said I would probably ask you is, how do you come up with new names? I mean, the fantasy genre is replete with interesting names, and they're all having to come up with something new and different. How do you manage to do that?
Honestly, I came up with the names of the towns so long ago, I don't even remember. I just sometimes I just throw a couple of different words together and see how it stuck. Like in the case of Doveland, in the case of the elves, I would sound out different sounds and see how it sounded, and if it sounded like something elvish, I guess. And so in my head, I've got all of these languages and how they sound. So I've had people comment on, like, for instance, the names that I choose for the gnomes in my books, which tend to be interesting. They have very complicated first names and then a very short, fun-sounding last name. So they might have a first name like Egatulus, and then the last name would be Funk. Just something very short. It sounds like it might be a sound that you would hear in a lab where they're working. So I came up with all these rules for the naming conventions on my own, and but where they came from, I don't know. It's just trial and error, playing around with things and seeing how things sounded.
Excellent. And then you developed your rule structure for this species. All the names will be like this and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So with the elves, they have a system where, and I know a lot of people hate the apostrophe in the names, but the reason I have...
It's elvish names. Let's throw apostrophe in there.
Yeah. The reason I have it there is because their naming convention is first name. So it's more an oriental type of feeling to that. Just the naming convention, and then the leader of the household, the one who embodies the house name, only goes by the last name. They drop their first name altogether to show that they are the embodiment of their house. So
they lose the apostrophe.
There's all kinds of weird little conventions that I've done along the way for names, and I try to stick to those as closely as I can.
Excellent. So, what's next for you after you complete A Hero's Birth, and you've got that trilogy done? I saw a hint on your webpage of something else coming, and then you also just mentioned that this was from a quest that you did in Dungeons & Dragons, which predated another quest that your friend said, you should write about our quests. So yes. What's next from the great Ryan Toxopeus?
Well, I've got a few ideas. Go figure. One is I would like to record audiobooks for this trilogy, because I've had a few requests for those, and I originally thought I would hire someone else to do that, because Amazon has a group that they work with, ACX, and right. They do kind of a profit-sharing 50-50 split between a voice actor and the author. But they don't have that in Canada. So I don't have that option. And I was talking to somebody, and he said he really likes it when the author reads their own book, because the author is the person who's most familiar with the work. They know how every word is said and where the inflections are and all this type of thing. So I started thinking about that, and I was like, well, I wouldn't want to listen to my voice for hours and hours, but maybe someone else would. So I think I might try that, at least with a Noble's Quest, and see if people enjoy that. If they don't, then it's the shortest book in the series. It's something like 75,000 words, whereas the other two books are 140 and 150,000 words. So you're getting almost twice as much story in the other ones, and that's a major commitment for an audiobook.
Yeah, but then you get to put the tagline as read by the author.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd like to try that, and then I'm going to do a bunch of things. One is I want to do a novella that looks at the antagonist's point of view from A Hero's Birth, because I was planning on including his point of view in the story, but it's getting to be quite long at this point, and I don't want it to get too big. I made a commitment to my developmental editor that it would be around 150,000 words, so I don't want it to be 175,000 and say, okay, listen, that's not going to fly. I had started writing his point of view in, and I cut all of that out and I put it in a separate file. So I'm thinking I might tweak that and make it its own story, because I really, really enjoy the antagonist. He's sort of a moron, and he's a vampire with godly powers. Uh-oh. So it's like this perfect recipe for a horrible character, and it could be a lot of fun to write. And he's got this great character who follows him around because she thinks he's the chosen one for the dark side, if you will. And she's just completely fed up with him all the time because he keeps wanting to do really stupid things. And she's like, you realize that this is going to lead to our ruin, right? And he's like, well, you said I'm from a prophecy, so obviously whatever I do is going to work.
Uh-oh.
And she regrets that a lot.
He's bought into his own prophecy.
Yeah. He's a fun character for a bad guy. He's got his own backstory that it actually starts out in a noble's quest. So he's like a face from the past comes back to haunt them type of thing.
Nice.
And I just really like him. So I want to write his story, and then I want to, before I do the next series, which will be called The Strongblade Siblings, I want to do 3 short stories, one for each of the protagonists in that series, because I've got 3 excellent characters again. A series title probably let you guess. They are siblings. They're all of the Strongblade line. And so there's Gregor, who is the oldest, and he's mercenary for hire. Not really the nicest guy that you'd ever want to meet. And then I've got Sardo, who is the middle child. She is a wild child. She has a hard time telling anybody the truth. And she gets into a lot of trouble. And then the youngest is Tritheus, and he has a complicated story that he's kind of hiding who he is from everybody else until he's forced to act and reveal his true nature, if you will. But it's a really fun story because they're siblings, and there's all that sibling conflict that happens. They're forced to go adventuring together, and they don't even really like each other. So it's just this awful situation that they're thrown into, where their lives depend on each other, and they're we're family. We should work together. I guess I'll do what's right type of situation.
You're going to be very careful that they don't talk you into letting them split up.
Yeah, they stick together pretty well, at least in the outline. Who knows what they'll do when it comes to writing it.
Outline, schmoutline. I'm the character. This book's about me.
Yeah. So I've got a bunch of different writing things that I want to do, time and money permitting.
Excellent. So before we wrap up this interview, is there anything else you would like the viewers and your readers and potential readers to know?
There is a new digital conference coming up on Facebook called FantasyCon, and that is a week long. It runs from November 1st to November 8th. I am on Epic Wednesday. The way they're working the booths is everybody gets their own little page where they can post all kinds of interesting information about their books and stuff. So if anybody wants to drop by and say hi, leave a note, any messages of support, if you like the books or whatever, then you can do that. And there'll be lots of other people that you can check out their work. There's going to be authors and artists, and there's even a cosplay thing that they're doing where people can take pictures of themselves in their outfits, and there's contests. There will be scavenger hunts, which I've been asked to participate in. So I've got some reading that people can do to find answers to questions based on a Noble's Quest. So it's coming along really nicely, and it's looking like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Excellent, excellent. Well, hey, thank you so very much, Ryan, for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Steve. It's been a lot of fun.
Of course. And so I'm going to go ahead and switch over the screen and close out the interview. So don't disconnect just yet, and we'll chat for a couple more minutes and everything.
Sounds good.
All right. So thank you very much. We'll see you later. All right. So once again, I was just speaking with Ryan Toxopeus when he brought us his Empire's Foundation trilogy, and wow, what a great story concept that is. First 2 books are already out, with a 3rd book on its way at speeds way faster than George R.R. Martin can deliver. So pick up the first 2 books now. I will put all the links. So I've got the links to Ryan's website as well as his Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and some YouTube videos. And I went and I checked out his YouTube videos earlier, and he does some stories. He does Green Eggs and Ham using characters from Lord of the Rings, the Gollum and everything, and it's very interesting and fun to watch. So check those out. I hear him chuckling in the background. He didn't know I was going to mention that. And so, but go ahead and check that out. If you're watching this YouTube embedded in another site, just click the little button over here that says Watch on YouTube, and then you can see the description down below, and I've got the links for everything. Connect with Ryan. Check out his books on Amazon. I had the link to all his books on Amazon there. Thank you very much. Don't forget to subscribe to ODNT Spotlight. I have many more authors, artists, illustrators, musicians, actors, all coming on the show. So you want to be informed about those as they happen. So don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so very much for watching. Have yourself a great night. Bye.